There are a few people that still care. With us from the Capitol, member of the Intelligence, Homeland Security, and Appropriations Committee, Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, and member of the Judiciary Committee, and ranking member of the Rules Committee, Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. They are out with a new bill that aims to protect America against foreign interference in future elections. And as much as I would like to talk about the national debt, you all are actually talking about something more immediate right now, and that is how do we protect future elections from what happened in 2016 when we seem to have an administration that just doesn't care. Let me start with you, Senator Lankford.
Yeah, that's exactly what we seem to see, is that interference in the elections absolutely happened during the 2016 time period. The Russians were trying to engage. So our issue is, how do we protect it for the future? States run elections. States should continue to run elections. But we've got 12 states that can't audit their election systems right now. It took almost a year for the federal government to be able to contact some of the states that the Russians were trying to probe their system. So we've got to speed up the communication between the federal government and the states. We've got to bolster up the states and what they're doing to make sure they can audit their systems and find a good way to be able to cooperate together, or we're going to run into the same thing all over again.
Senator Klobuchar, what I don't understand is everybody seemed to be on notice. The Obama administration knew that the Russians were trying to interfere in the election. The Trump campaign had been warned by the FBI in July that the Russians were trying to interfere with the election. And yet things just move forward. And now, of course, the Trump administration is doing nothing to ensure that the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, other federal powers, other foreign powers don't actually interfere with U.S. elections and take away, rob them of their vote in the future.
Exactly, and that's why we joined together across the aisle, James and I, along with Senator Harris and Senator Lindsey Graham, to put this bill forward that we're doing today. And basically, one of the reasons that they didn't give them this information, this is unbelievable, is that the state election heads don't always have the clearance to get warnings about this information. So one of the things we do in the bill is put forth some requirements that they get those security clearances, so then they're able to share information, in addition to a grant program, which, by the way, amounts to 3% of the cost of one aircraft carrier. When you think of our national security with this cyber war that we're seeing, that will allow states to use the money to upgrade their equipment, get backup paper ballots, and really make things safer for all Americans. Because, you know, we can talk about this all we want, but if we have a major hack into an election when 42 states haven't upgraded their equipment in 10 years, then it undermines the very democracy that's the foundation of our country.
Senators, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you both this morning. Senator Lankford, let me ask you about the vulnerabilities of our election system. As you look at what Russia did in 2016, as you look what's still happening right now, if I'm an American voter sitting at home watching right now, where are the areas I should be most concerned? Where are we most vulnerable?
Well, let me make two comments on this. One is to answer Joe's question, has the administration done anything about it? They actually have. The Department of Homeland Security has been very engaged in this. They've been very cooperative in helping with this bill, and they've also been very engaged in working with the states over the last year, trying to help them upgrade their systems and to be able to watch out for real vulnerabilities. The key thing that we need to be able to watch for is a specific thing. Is their equipment auditable? Can you actually run a ballot there and then to be able to verify it? If there's someone that hacks into that system, we lose all credibility in that system. They've got to be able to have a backup verification. About 12 states can't do that. Quite a few of the other states, their voting machines, they'll take them, they'll upgrade them beforehand. We've got to know the supply chain. Is the supply chain verifiable? Have the Russians trying to engage in trying to affect any of the software on those machines beforehand? So it's real basic systems about upgrades and securities. But if states don't do that, and if they haven't done that in a while, you lose trust. And at the end of an election, the last thing you want to have is a close election and a loss of trust on what actually happened.
So, Senator Klobuchar, is that where you see the vulnerability then? Because Russia tampered in many ways and had its hand on the election, but there's been no evidence yet that actual votes were changed in the election. Do you see vulnerability there going forward?
Well, it could happen, of course. It did not happen in the last election that our intelligence community has established, but we had 21 attempts at hacking state election equipment, and our intelligence agencies firmly, both under the Obama administration, under the Trump administration, have established that. So, of course, I see this as a vulnerability, or we wouldn't be doing this. And, you know, the things we've told you today aren't secret. They know it. And it's very important that we keep upgrading the systems and we help the states to do it.
Senators, I'm interested, it's John Heilman here, I'm interested in some of the activity we had yesterday. Senator Warner gave an important speech yesterday on the Senate floor in reaction to a lot of activity happening on the House side. It seems to be designed to undermine the credibility of the FBI and Special Prosecutor Mueller. So I'm curious, especially you, Senator Lankford, do you agree with Senator Warner that there should be a red line around the question of Bob Mueller and whether or not he has any moves around by the president to try to fire him?
I do, actually, but what's interesting is the White House does as well. They keep saying over and over again with spokesmen, with the president, with everyone else saying, we're not going to fire Robert Mueller. The comments that Senator Warner made were legitimate to be able to say everyone is under the law. But with that, everyone should have equal justice under the law, including the president. And when it comes out that a member of the Mueller team that was a part of the investigation had a very strong political bias against President Trump also deserves equal justice under the law. So this is not about attacking Mueller. This is about basic accountability to say everyone deserves it to be fair. I've been very outspoken to say Mueller needs to be able to finish his job and needs to be able to do it well. But when he finds members of his team, which he has already done, that do have a bias, they should be removed and keep it fair.
But Director Mueller, to be clear, removed that agent immediately when they found out this information. And so I don't see it, as James has said himself, as tainting the entire investigation in any way. And it is incredibly important, given all the information we know already from our intelligence agencies, that this investigation be allowed to be completed.
Senator Klobuchar, I'd love to hear more from you on the issue of sexual harassment. There's been a lot of discussion, debate about due process, and I'm wondering if you still think Al Franken's resignation was a good idea, especially given that he was open to an investigation.
Well, I had firmly said that there should be an investigation the day that the first information came out, and I will say that he himself made this decision to resign. It was not an easy decision, and I'm not sure in the mix of all the news and that tax bill yesterday, which I agree with Joe, by the way, if it came out that he actually gave a date yesterday of January 2nd that he will be resigning.
But there are a lot of Democrats that were calling for his resignation. Do you think his resignation was a good idea?
I did not publicly call for his resignation because we are colleagues, and we had many, many talks over that time. And the reasons that he gave for his resignation were reasons that he and I discussed, and that was that with all of the mounting allegations, but also the senators calling on him to resign, he was put in a place where he felt he couldn't be effective. He made the decision, and he is strongly supporting the new senator that's going to come in January, Tina Flint Smith.
And then moving forward, it's behavior we're talking about. We're having at times fiery, but at times honest debate about how we handle these situations. Moving forward, do you think due process is where we ought to be focusing on, how to actually make a process that is open to women speaking out, but also open to fairness?
Yeah, I really appreciate that you have brought up those two words. I think it's really important that we have due process for anyone. This isn't about toppling men. This is about safer work environments and making everyone feel that they can be successful in a work environment. And so that means due process. It also means gradated penalties, so that depending on what the conduct is, there's a penalty that matches the conduct. And I think that's something all workplaces have to deal with, not just in the Congress.
Absolutely. We're talking a lot about it here. Senator Lankford, do you want to chime in? What do you make of, first of all, Al Franken's resignation? Do you think he should have resigned? And where does due process go from here, especially on the Hill?
A couple of weeks ago, you and I spoke about this before on this same program. I do believe that he should have gone through the ethics investigation. I think that sets a good precedent for any investigation to say, once there's allegations, let's establish all the facts, let's establish all the conversation in it, and then to be able to mete out what is appropriate for that actual activity and to be able to walk through it. That's important, that not only people are heard, but that everyone is heard in the process.
Senators James Lankford and Amy Klobuchar, thank you very much. We appreciate your candor.
Well, thank you also for this bipartisan bill. I hope Republicans and Democrats get on board, because it may be Republicans who have elections stolen from them in the future, or Democrats. It's so critical.
Thank you both.
Could happen to either side. Thank you.
Still ahead, the president is awake and tweeting this morning, saying the massive tax cuts, which the fake news media is desperate to write badly about so as to please their Democrat bosses, will soon be kicking in and will speak for themselves.
Well, then why don't you let them speak for
because he needs
themselves.
To make sure it's sort of like framed his way in a way that's not really truthful. But okay. We're going to bring in NBC's Tom Brokaw next on Morning Joe.